The embarrassing moment Jamie Dornan happily held his divorce papers from Amelia Warner in his hands. Jamie Dornan woke earlier than usual. Dawn filtered through the frosted curtains, illuminating the dust motes floating in the air. He swung his feet off the bed, stepping lightly so as not to wake the empty bedroom across the street, where Amelia should still be, but today, was gone. His heart fluttered a little, a strange feeling of freedom and emptiness. He thought of the court date, finally, where he would receive the final divorce decree. He put on his white shirt, adjusted his cuffs, stood in front of the mirror and looked at his face, the face that had often shown aura, now betrayed sleepless nights, unspoken regrets, and apologies that remained behind. He took a deep breath. A chapter ends, he said to himself. And hopefully a new one begins. 2. On the way to court. As the driver drove Jamie through the familiar streets, he looked at the empty streets on both sides, the early opening shops, the few passengers hurrying by. He quietly recalled the years of their life together, the laughter, the voices, the evenings together. But he also remembered the conflicts, the silences, the times he was stubborn, the times she cried in the bathroom. Memories flickered. He wondered, what would she feel when she saw the name, Jamie Dornan, on the notice board announcing the trial date? Anger, pain, relief? He didn't know. He only knew he was moving toward the position of the man who was about to liberate him, in the way he imagined. When the car stopped in front of the courthouse, Jamie stepped out. He looked at the tall buildings, the shiny glass doors, the large open doors. He felt his heart beat faster, not from fear, but from excitement. He adjusted his vest, closed his eyes for a second, and stepped inside. 3. Inside the courthouse, waiting. The courthouse lobby was quiet, white lights shining on the cold stone walls. The clerks moved quietly, desks neatly arranged. Jamie walked to the reception desk, gave his name to be checked. He signed, waited. While he waited, he rummaged through his pockets, phone, pen, papers, and a feeling of nervousness spread. A secretary called his name. Jamie stood up and walked into the small room. Before him stood a woman in a formal suit, an administrative adjudicator or a person who carried out the procedures. She invited him to sit at the table. On the table were piles of files, papers bound in white covers, stapled. She asked, "Mr. Dornan, are all the papers in order? Have you signed the acknowledgements?" Jamie nodded. He looked at the papers, then back at the secretary. There was professionalism in her gaze, but also the gaze of the court's authority. The secretary typed, checking the details, dates filed, signatures, authentications. Each slow step seemed to drag on. Jamie's mind was filled with memories of Amelia and the children, the mornings when she called, "Daddy," the small smiles on her face as he played with her, and the times she looked at him with hope, and he didn't respond. The secretary placed the last piece of paper in front of Jamie, the divorce decree, which had been approved by the court. She said, "Mr. Dornan, this is the official acknowledgement. From now on, the papers will be sent to the other party. The procedure is complete." Jamie felt like a bolt from the blue, a mixture of emotions, relief, pain, freedom, regret, all melting in his chest. He slowly pulled the decree toward himself. Awkward moment. As Jamie held the paper in his hands, a surge of surprise washed over him. He jumped to his feet, his posture uncontrollable, like someone who had just received good news. He smiled, a smile that was not quite complete, mixed with confusion. He glanced around the room. The court officers were looking at him, eyes furrowed and uncertain. He felt embarrassed, as if he had just declared a personal victory, but one that was cloaked in loneliness. He stood there, the decision in his hand, his shoulders shaking slightly. He had forgotten how to stand still. He wanted to say something, finally, but his mouth was dry. He wiped his hands on his trousers, trying to keep his composure. Someone in the room, a lawyer or an assistant, perhaps, looked at him with mild suspicion. Mr. Dornan, please calm down. He cleared his throat, forced a smile. Yes, sorry, thank you. His voice was soft, uncertain. He bent down to take the paper, flipped to the first page, the signature, the seal, Amelia's name, all close together like a reminder that the marriage was over. He wanted to fold it quickly, to cover the paper as if to cover the pain, but the eyes of the people in the room made it impossible to hide his attitude. Some people smiled politely to ease the situation, but their looks contained both curiosity and apprehension. Jamie felt his cheeks heat up. He wanted to retreat, to disappear. He placed the paper gently on the table, took a deep breath, and tried to control his emotions. The secretary said, "The procedure is complete, Mr. Dornan. You can leave. The papers will be sent to the other side in the next few days." A moment of silence. Jamie bowed his head and walked out of the room. He tried to give everyone a superficial smile. But the Stepha's legs wobbled, as the person said, as he left the room, where he had just been seen happily holding the divorce decree, an image both powerful and embarrassing. On the way home, echoes. As Jamie left the courthouse and walked out into the lobby, he felt the eyes of passersby. Some stopped to look at him, some turned away, some walked past. He bowed his head and walked quickly. In front of him was a large glass door overlooking the street. He stopped, looked behind him. The silhouette of the courthouse stood tall, like a cold structure witnessing the end of a part of his life. He felt his heart pounding, his breath shaking. He pulled out his phone, intending to call someone, a friend, a legal representative, but his finger naturally slid to the long draft text message that had not been sent. He deleted everything, put the phone back in his pocket. He didn't want to say anything right now. He stepped out, got into the car. The driver looked at him suspiciously. Jamie said nothing, sat down in the back seat, holding the decision in his hand. A heavy feeling spread through his body. He wanted to scream, not from anger, but from the pressure in his heart. But he didn't dare. He just pressed his cheek against the glass door, watching the light drizzle outside, even though it wasn't raining today. In that moment, he wondered, what would he really feel when he looked back at this decision? Happy for being freed? Sad for losing? Or ashamed for letting things get to the point where a piece of paper had to confirm the end? He closed his eyes, and images of her, Amelia, appeared. Sad eyes, unspoken words, tears. He heard a child's voice calling, "Daddy," in his memory. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, holding the separation contract in his hand, and not knowing how to move on. Silent with the decision, back at his own home, where he used to live with Amelia, he was now alone. He walked into the living room, the dim light from the ceiling lamp. He placed the decision on the table, where there used to be family photos, a vase of flowers, and small notebooks, now almost empty. He sat down on the old leather chair, head bowed, holding the paper copy. The room was silent as if waiting for him to say something. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the paper, quickly wiping away the tears that had been leaking from the corners of his eyes for who knows when. He wanted to tear it up, throw it away, but he was afraid that the image of the paper would linger in his mind. He wondered, had anyone ever witnessed this moment, a public man, a celebrity, holding a divorce paper with a happy appearance but a broken heart? And if they had, what would they think? He remembered the interviews, the flashbulbs, the newspaper headlines, and now, if this image were to spread, Jamie Dornan happily holds divorce decree, he knew, he would be the subject of harsh gossip. He felt ashamed that he had let this painful moment become a script for public opinion. He took the paper from the table, picked it up, looked carefully at each letter, each stamp. Then he gently folded it, put it in the drawer. He closed the drawer, as if burying it with the past. 7. Reflecting overnight. He did not sleep all night. He sat at his desk, the warm yellow light of the desk lamp. In front of him was the decision and a cup of cold tea. He opened his notebook, wrote a few lines. Today, I hold in my hand the decision of divorce, and in that moment, I realized that I had both won and lost. I had won by freeing myself from tension, from distorted conflict. But I had also failed, because I had let a precious relationship come to a point where it had to be ended in writing. I am ashamed that people see me, a man holding a divorce paper, and think I am happy. But the truth is, in that faint smile there is a crack, regret, and anxiety. I'm not sure I've done this much wrong. But I'm sure I've hurt someone I once loved so much. I didn't dare look at Amelia in that moment, for fear she'd see the emptiness in my eyes. Now, the decision lies in a drawer, like a painful memory I want to hide. But I know, the past can't be buried forever. It's still there, etched in my heart. The question is, do I have the courage to move on without looking back? He closed the notebook, put down the pen. He looked at the small potted plant on the table, the leaves gently swaying in the night wind. He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the dark sky. No stars, only the distant streetlights. He promised himself, from tomorrow, he would not let that embarrassing moment define him anymore. 8. A new dawn. Acceptance. Moving on. The next morning, Jamie woke up with a slight headache and bright light from the window. He knew, today was the first day of a new life, not one that began with joy, but with acceptance. He left the room, walked into Amelia's empty room, where she had once decorated books, computers, and family photos. Now, there were only a few things she had been forced to leave. He stood in the middle of the room, looking around, every corner, every bookshelf, every little nail mark on the wall, all as reminders that this had once been their home. He walked out, grabbed the divorce decree from the drawer he pulled. He went to the small dump behind the house, where few people would notice. He put the paper down, looked at it, then touched the name, Amelia Warner, as if touching the story was over. Then with a slow breath, he put the paper in the small black folder, put it in the trash can. When he stepped out, the first rays of the new day shone through the trees, illuminating his face. His eyes, breathing deeply. He knew that moment, when he happily held the decision, would forever be an unforgettable memory. But now, he wanted to put it in the past, so that there would be no more stains, no more shame to drag him back. He stepped out onto the street, each step slowly, like someone who had just crossed the desert and found some shade, his head bowed but his eyes looking straight ahead. He knew that there were days ahead that he needed to learn to live on, no more Amelia as his partner, no more promises with his children, but still had memories, responsibilities, and a part of his feelings that he wanted to keep.